Hello, everybody, and welcome into a Tuesday evening edition of KC Sports Night. I'm Mark Poulose, joined frequently by the great Gabe Swartz as we break down everything going on in Kansas City sports. I know today is only a Tuesday, but we have so much to talk about, and it really all starts with the biggest story in town, the Kansas City Royals returning home to Kauffman Stadium for a 6-game homestand. Gabe, right now the Royals are 38-40, 2 games below 500. They're really basically at the halfway point. After the series against the Rays, they'll have played 81 games, and we're really learning a lot about this team. So here we go. We're turning back home to Kauffman Stadium. I want to start the conversation around this point. A lot of fans think of Kauffman Stadium as a home field advantage. They think of the Royals being very good at home. Gabe, are you ready for this? The Royals just 3-14 in their last 17 games at Kauffman Stadium. What do you make of that?
Well, I think that the idea of them being good at home is mostly a product of last year, where they were one of the best teams in baseball at home, and honestly was a product of through early May, mid-May, I would say. They were still really, really good at home, and I think at one point they were 17-5 at home this season.
I think you're right, and they had the best home record in the American League.
And then
that was this year.
And then since then they lost the series to the Reds, they lost the series to the Tigers, they were swept by the Yankees, they were swept by the A's. Most concerning, I think, are those series against the Reds and the A's, because those are teams that they probably should have handled at home. The Rays don't necessarily profile as a team that you're just penciling in for a series win against, but I would say it's critical to get a series win against them, because they're another AL wildcard contending team, and winning those games, as we mentioned on yesterday's show against Texas last week, was really helpful in terms of positioning the Royals in that spot. And you've got the Mariners playing the Twins this week. There's just so many of those matchups where, with the new schedule being the new schedule of the last 2 to 3 years, of you play more of the rest of the league than you do of just your divisional opponents. You're no longer playing divisional teams 16, 17 times a year. You're playing everybody 13 times a season. That means that inherently you're matching up with interleague games are happening at times, and you're also getting a lot more games, or there's a more evened amount of games against AL East teams and AL West teams. And that is what shapes the wild card race. And we know that because last year the Royals made the playoffs as the last team, or as their tiebreaker was beating the Mariners at Kauffman Stadium in that crazy comeback game where they were down 7-8 runs early on and came back to walk off and win 10-9 on that crazy Friday night. And that just goes to show you how important these games are, and I think that kind of sets the stage for this week at Kauffman, and specifically these first 3 games. I think that, yes, the Dodgers are clearly a better team than the Rays, but in terms of importance of winning, where losses almost feel like 2 losses, because not only are you moving down in the standings, the team that you're chasing is moving up in the standings. These 3 games, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, against the Rays, are so important to the Royals setting the tone and kind of making up for the fact that last homestand was an absolute disaster.
Yeah, there really is no other way to say it. The Royals, they've lost 7 straight games at home. They've lost 6 consecutive series at home. And, guys, the numbers, they honestly get worse and worse. The Royals have hit just 13 homers in 38 games at home, which is by far the fewest in all of baseball. And the next closest is the Pirates at 24, which is 11 more home runs than the Kansas City Royals. We know Kauffman Stadium, obviously a big park, and we have kind of come to think of the Royals being a very good team at home, but it has not been a good place for them as of late. And now 2 good teams coming to Kansas City this week, as Gabe mentioned, both the Tampa Bay Rays and the LA Dodgers. It is going to be critical that the Royals kind of stay afloat here, because it really leads right into our next point, is because we are 78 games through this into the season. The trade deadline is approaching here, coming up at the end of July, or maybe it's changed a little bit. But the Royals are going to be faced with a big question here, because they entered this season, they wanted to really contend for the playoffs. They really thought they were going to be able to take another jump, more than just win 1 series, maybe win 2, 3 in the postseason, and really see what happens. But it's safe to say we have seen them take a step back so far this season. They are not as good as they were a year ago, and they are not producing the way that they are. My question here, Gabe, is should the Royals be buyers, sellers, or is it too early to tell? Because I'm beginning to think, I really have the opinion, this homestand, these next 6 games could really determine that. If the Royals go 1-5 on this homestand, 2-4, and they sink further and further in the wild card and division races, I don't know how J.J. Picollo could go to John Sherman and say, we're going to go out and get something, because it's not, in my opinion, I'm not sure it's worth mortgaging your future for a team that might win 83, 84 games. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't think that it would be anything of mortgaging the future. I don't think that they're at the point where they're good enough to send away the top echelon of their prospects in terms of the future. I do think they are in the conversation where you can talk yourself into, hey, if we can aid our flaws, our strengths are so strong that if we just raise the floor of the team and fix the issues, then we become a substantially better team. The counterpoint to that, of course, is that they felt like they did that this offseason, and that hasn't necessarily gone as according to plan. But at the same time, you can make similar moves where, like, I don't feel like the Royals mortgaged the future in the Lucas Erceg trade last season, and yet that massively fixed one of their, or aided in the fixing of one of their biggest flaws last year, which was we were talking all season long about how bad the bullpen was and how many games the bullpen was giving away, whereas this year it feels like the lineup is giving the games away. And so every night it feels like they're rolling out a corner outfielder who's not necessarily helping, or an outfielder who is not necessarily helping offensively. And so whether the move is Jonathan India going back to the corner outfield and you add a third baseman and you move Michael Garcia to second base, or whether it's Michael Garcia plays more in the outfield because you know that he has that athleticism, and they add a third baseman, who knows? But there are guys out there who are going to be available. Now, if there are more teams trying to buy than sell, who knows what the market looks like? And that's where we've only had now 2 iterations of these new playoff formats and more teams being in the mix, which just changes the complexion of how many teams are willing to give away players. And the only clear-cut teams who you know are going to have those fire sales are like the White Sox and Baltimore, because Baltimore's not having a great season. But to your point, yes, if they have a losing homestand this weekend, then you're almost at the point where either they will quietly sell, I would say, where you get rid of veterans who are on at the end of this season, their contract expires, or you just stand pat and you just let the team ride through the 162 games and say, all right, guys, like, you're on your own. And that's one of those things where you see across the MLB all the time. Sometimes a clubhouse sees upper management not make any moves, and they take it personally, and they either play better and they say, well, you guys should have been believing in us, or they take it personally and it goes, oh, okay, they don't really believe in us, and then play gets even worse. But this week is absolutely critical in that respect, because, yeah, it's a halfway point, and we talked about so many times in the show what the marker of Memorial Day meant for this team, and how many moves we saw Gaglione get called up. We saw different guys getting called up from AAA.
And we also saw subtractions. Hunter Renfroe.
Yeah.
Stratton.
Yeah.
Seen a lot of guys. See, I guess the thing that really, I know a lot of Royals fans are kind of romanticizing this idea of trading and adding a bat and not obviously having to trade a lot. But I feel like I'm breaking some news to these people. Like, that's just really, it's not going to happen. Like, this whole offseason, J.J. Picollo wanted to add another bat to this lineup. He reached out to try to find trade partners. The Royals had players to trade. They had pieces to move, and no one wanted what the Royals had to offer. Here we are, the Royals right now below 500. They have a fan base that wants a winner. They have an owner that wants a new stadium, and they're not putting out a good product. If you're from the outside looking in, you have the Royals right where you want them. You have them in a position where if they were going to trade, I think they would have to overpay because of all these situations. I don't think you're going to get a good impact quality bat by not trading one of your best prospects. And I really think one of the Royals, they want an outfielder. They want someone else that can add some offense to this lineup. But another point I want to make on that is I also don't think one bat is going to save this lineup. The Royals' offense is one of the worst in Major League Baseball. I believe it is the worst in the American League. And adding one impact bat, what's that going to raise your rank from 29 to 20?
Yeah,
not even that probably. So one bat is not going to save this team. And a lot of it, I really think last year, and I know it was a big step forward for the team, but I think in part it really was a mirage because of the running and scoring position batting average. I think last year they were second in the major leagues with batters in running and scoring position. This year they are like second to last, third to last.
But then couldn't you argue that that's a mirage too, and that the truth lies somewhere in the middle? If they're not the greatest run producing team, and they're not the absolute worst, they're probably somewhere in the middle. And I feel like I'm taking crazy pills because I keep saying this, but over 162 games, you would think that the sample size would even out to some extent.
I guess I would. My counterpoint to that is you'd think over 78 games. You think that would be enough games for it to figure out. And like we see them out there, and I really think the runners in scoring position issue it is so mental because like the other day I know we were talking to Bobby Witt Jr. after the team only meeting and he talked about the pressure that they put on themselves, and it's kind of like. Hopefully it's different at this homestand. Like when you went out to the ballpark, you could feel that the guys are maybe that they expect to be playing well and they just simply are not. And it's just we're gonna have to wait and see. But if I were the Royals, like I don't understand how you can. I don't think that they're in a position right now to be buyers. But say they rattle off some wins here on this homestand. I mean, 12 of the next 19 games are at Kauffman Stadium. So if the Royals do get things rolling, I can see buying. But for right now, it is looking a little rough. Anything else on that, Gabe?
The toughest thing for them is that they're not good enough at the moment. They're not clearly far enough into a playoff spot like the Tigers are, for example, where you can say, okay, we're either going to win our division or at the very least we're going to get a wild card spot, which is what Detroit can say. And so if you're in that position and you're in a smaller market where you're not typically a team who spends a ton, you can afford to do what the Royals did in 2015, which was you knew you were a good team, you knew you were a playoff team, you went and you sold assets or traded assets to get guys who were on expiring contracts, the Ben Zobrists of the world, the Johnny Cuetos of the world. This team is not in that position to go get guys on expiring deals unless they're giving away or unless a team is willing to do that for a lesser prospect. And so, if anything, if you're fishing in the market of just guys who are on team controllable deals, then yes, that increases the price. But is that maybe the fix for the end of the year plus the fix for the offseason, and so you do less in the offseason, which is what they did with Lucas Ursig. They got a guy who had 3-4 years of team control, and thus you didn't have to do as much in the bullpen in the offseason to fix issues. I don't know, but we will see. And of course, it all starts tonight.
And it's always fun to think about. These are definitely some of the exact same things that J.J. Piccolo, the entire Royals front office, they have to think about these things all the time. But I would say, just in kind of seeing how J.J. operates and the Royals operate, I don't think that they would really I don't think they would ever go after a move that would really jeopardize the future. I don't think they would go all in on the season that it doesn't look like it would be. But we'll have to wait and see. You never know what could happen. Maybe they get a directive from above. There's other elements at play. There's a stadium discussion going on. So we're going to have to see what happened. But the trade deadline coming up, the Royals kind of a little bit of murky water there. Now, moving on real quickly, we're going to catch you up on the American League All-Star voting update because we had some new results come out recently. And the Royals do have several players worthy of being All-Stars, but fans might not see as many Royals down in Atlanta as they want just because the Royals are very far behind in some of these votes. Shortstop Bobby Witt Jr., he's the top Royal. He's in second place to the A's Jacob Wilson. So he needs to kind of make up some ground there. Third base, Maikel Garcia, he's playing like an all-star. He's one of the best third basemen in all of baseball. Right now, though, he's seventh in the voting, and he is well behind first place. Jose Ramirez out of Cleveland, about $1.5 million behind. The other only Royals in the top 10 for the position players are catcher Sal Perez. He's eighth in that voting. And at first base, Vinny is sixth. So, guys, if you want to see some of these Royals down there in Atlanta, go online, vote for these guys. Let's see what happens. All right, moving on. Sporting KC, today they met with the media today. They are hosting Charlotte FC tomorrow. And actually what's really cool about this is this is the very first time Sporting KC has ever played Charlotte FC. Charlotte FC entered the MLS in 2022, and just somehow the way the schedule fell, that Sporting KC had yet to play this team from North Carolina. Kerry Zavagnin met with the media today, asked a little bit about Charlotte FC. He says their coaching staff comes from the Premier League, and they play a very organized style of soccer. Going to be exciting to see that tomorrow night. But one thing here, Sporting KC is on its first losing streak under interim head coach Kerry Zavagnin. They've lost 2 matches in a row. And then coming up on Saturday, they're also Sporting's going to honor Matt Beasler, a local Kansas City kid. Gabe, so here we are, Sporting KC. Peter Vermees left earlier this season. Kerry Zavagnin's kind of taken over. We've seen a little bit of a spark. They're only 6 points, I believe, out of the playoff picture. Kind of how would you assess kind of Sporting KC? How would you say they've done since Peter Vermees parted ways and Kerry has taken over?
I would say it's decent. They're in the conversation for a fringe playoff spot, but yeah, it doesn't necessarily feel consistent. And we've talked about this several times on this show of the different style. It doesn't necessarily feel like, for someone who, and maybe this is the product of someone who worked with Peter Vermees for so long and was in the team room for that long, is trying to instill your own habits and your own fingerprint, I guess, on the team when you were still a part of it is a complex process. And I think we've seen that with the way that different games have gone, and specifically the way that games at home have gone. They've not necessarily been a great defensive team, and typically you would think it's going to be easier to play some defense at home and not concede as many goals, but they've given up 3 goals to the Revolution. They gave up 4 to Dallas this past weekend, or 2 weekends ago. And so, yeah, I think that is one of the things that's a little more concerning, is that they're not protecting home field as well, when fans are still going out to Children's Mercy Park, and it's still one of the better environments in the MLS, I would say. So I think that's probably the concern, but they still have some chances, and this is going to be a good spot to have an opportunity to turn the tide, I guess. But yeah, I think that the end summation, I guess, for me would just be it's been decent.
I think that's very, very fair. They are improved, but are they world beaters? No. Are they one of the top teams in the league? No. But are they no longer in last place? Yes. So that is a huge improvement from before. And I know, just going out there speaking with Kerry a few times, like, so much of what he wants to do is just honestly reinstill belief in these guys, because like he talked about how in the past, like, if somebody would go, or he didn't talk about this, the players talked about this. Daniel Shallow, he said this a couple months ago, that previously under the Peter Vermees era at the end of last year, like when things would go wrong, they would kind of get their heads down, body language would be poor, they wouldn't play well, and they didn't believe. After the Dallas game, which Sporting lost, giving up 4 goals, Kerry Zavagnin was kind of asked about the grit and spirit of this group, and he said, we didn't have the result that we wanted tonight. There were some calls in that match that made the scoreboard look a little different than maybe it would have otherwise. I mean, obviously both teams play with the same officials, but Sporting KC kind of felt like they got a little bit jobbed in that one, and the players kept fighting to the end. Like, I mean, I think that's a very important sign for a guy that's an interim head coach, because he's the interim head coach for the rest of the season, is what it looks like, and the team still buys into what he's saying. And I mean, he could have lost the locker room. I mean, a longtime franchise icon they part ways 6 games into the season. Like, this all could have gone south in a way that we did not see. So I think Kerry Zavagnin deserves some kudos for that. So we're going to see 2 matches coming up today, one tomorrow and then one on Saturday. On Saturday, they're honoring Matt Beasler. Good to be out there. One more note on Sporting KC is that they actually talked about the heat that's come to Kansas City recently and how they've had to kind of acclimate to that. They've had a couple good days of practice, so the team feels pretty good that they're going to be able to deal with the heat well tomorrow against Charlotte FC. Now, 2 more topics to talk about today. KU Hoops continues to make additions here in the offseason, and you really don't see players of this caliber added to any college basketball roster at June 24th on the sports calendar. This is very, very atypical. But today, the Kansas Jayhawks announced that they have signed Cole Rosario to play at KU next year. He's 6'5", 185 pounds. He played for a team called Overtime Elite last season out of, I believe, the Atlanta area. But Cole is from a Miami area, and he was ranked the number 27 prospect in the class of 2026, but he is reclassified, so he will be a freshman coming up this year for the Kansas Jayhawks. He is seems like a pretty solid player, 16 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals per game on a team that won a national championship in high school, and he's the 5th high school signee of the class. He's joining the number 1 overall recruit, Darren Peterson, Calderon, Bryson Tiller, and Corbin Allen out of right here in Kansas City at Oak Park.
Yep.
So, Gabe, honestly, I was not expecting to see this in my inbox today, that KU had signed a player of this caliber. What do you kind of know about him? And then did this catch you by surprise? Because to me, this is very rare.
I mean, I know that he had visited KU recently, and they just have roster spots to fill. They've not necessarily gotten everything that they wanted in the transfer portal. Darian Williams from Texas Tech went to NC State instead of KU. Several different guys have chosen other spots than them, and that's kind of just the way that the era of NIL stuff goes, is guys don't necessarily care for the environment and the protege or the pedigree of KU basketball as much anymore. And frankly, the last couple of years of disappointing basketball is certainly not helping that. And so in that regard, KU's had to do some creative things. I think that getting a guy who is a top prospect in the class of 2026 to reclassify into 2025 is one of those more creative things. I think it's a team that is in need of shooting. They've been in need of shooting for a while, but in terms of wings, shooting guards, small forwards who can shoot it, Rosario, that is one of the things that he could profile as a guy who shot 40+% from 3 in high school, and in the Overtime Elite League, which is a unique competition, but at least he was playing winning basketball at that level. I will say, from my understanding of him, I've talked to a couple people who are in the college basketball space, and at least from their understanding of him, they said that they liked him as a prospect. It'll be interesting to see what level of contribution he'll be able to provide as one of the younger reclasses in this class. But from watching his highlights, the thing that stands out to me is that he has a quick release in terms of shooting the ball, and he's athletic. You'll see there's a lot of dunks, there's a lot of getting to the rim, and he's unique in the fact that it feels like he jumps off of 2 feet. It's just an odd, like, body control, body mechanism type of thing. So I'm intrigued to see how it looks. It's another guy who should be able to play off the ball next to Darren Peterson, and we'll see how it goes. They still probably need to get another big man, so they're in the market for that. And as you mentioned, the caliber of player that you're getting in June is always different. But 2 years ago, they were very late in the game and added Johnny Furphy, and he ended up being
NBA player,
a pretty solid contributor, and a guy who is in the NBA now. So we'll see.
Yeah, we're going to have to see. It really has been a very interesting offseason, I would say, for KU. I mean, signing Darren Peterson, but then you kind of look at some of the things that have happened afterwards, like with just the way the team kind of disassembled at the end of the year, and then how they've added, a lot of talent from a lot of creative ways. I was really kind of wondering, when all this was kind of going down at the end of the season, how Bill Self and how this organization, how this program was going to kind of fill the spots. And they have really found some very interesting solutions to bring in talented guys into Lawrence, Kansas, to bring that program maybe back to where they want it to be. And then also adding Jock Vaughn to the coaching staff. I mean, I don't think that can really be slept on. I think that's a huge, huge move by the Jayhawks. So here we go. We're talking KU basketball in June. We're going to see what happens coming up much later in the fall and winter. We have one last topic today, and I think it's going to be near and dear to a lot of Royals fans' hearts today. Whit Merrifield, the great Whit Merrifield, announced his official retirement from Major League Baseball. This is a guy he came up after the Royals had their World Series run, but boy, was he one heck of a player. He's a 3-time All-Star, 9 Major League seasons. He led the American League in stolen bases 3 times, hits twice, doubles and triples once. He has the Royals' longest hit streak in franchise history at 31 games. Also has the 553-game Ironman streak for the Royals, which was, at the time, the longest in baseball and a franchise record. And the longest one, if I remember correctly, I want to say it was like Miguel Tejada or someone like that. That Whit's streak was the longest one since. So he really made an imprint on baseball here in Kansas City. Gabe, seeing his retirement, I saw he thanked Kansas City. What did it mean to you to see him thank, obviously, KC? And then what are maybe your top memories of Whit?
Yeah, I mean, his retirement graphic was all photos of him in a Royals uniform. I think that he knows that is what he'll be remembered as. And honestly, his message in his retirement, he said Kansas City became his second home for him and his wife. Toronto was an honor to play north of the border. He said playing for the Phillies, he loved his time in Philly a lot more than Philly loved him because he sucked when he was there. It was his words, not mine. And Atlanta was a chance for him to end his career with the team that he grew up rooting for as a guy from South Carolina. So kind of a full circle moment in that regard. But yeah, I think that he was a bright spot in one of the down period of Royals baseball between this era of competitive baseball this year and last year and recently, and then the 2014, 15, 16 two World Series runs and that core. He wasn't really a part of it, but he was in the minor leagues for the Royals for a good portion of time because he was one of those late bloomers and kind of didn't get to the MLB until he was 27, and so for how late he was into his career before he got into the MLB, I think that his career is an overwhelming success. To have 2 years where you led the AL in hits, led the MLB in hits, and have the Royals' all-time hitting streak. Hopefully someday Bobby Witt Jr. breaks that thing or Jack Caglione breaks that thing. Who knows? I know
Vinny Pasquantino.
Yeah, who knows?
The Pasquatch.
So, but Whit Merrifield will be someone who is remembered as a Royal for the 9 years that he was in his career, and I think he's well aware of that. And his statement, his retirement announcement is that, and it was also just very understated. I mean, he's not playing baseball this season, and he said this was an easy decision. He knew it was time to be done, and he's 36 years old. He's a father now, and on to other things.
Yeah, I think with Whit Merrifield, he really was just a guy that did things the right way. And one thing that kind of stood out to me was in his thank you when he said he was honored to play in Canada. He spelled it the way that they spell it up in Canada, Honour. And like that's the kind of stuff that he does, and that was intentional. Is because he wants to show love and respect for the people up there north of the border. Playing for that entire country was big for him. But then while I was trying to actually dig up some video of Whit for our story that's going to air here at 6 p.m., I actually found an old soundbite from Bobby Witt Jr., and he was talking about how Whit was one of his role models in the Royals clubhouse, and he's like, I pay attention to his habits, how he works, how he speaks to the media, and all these things. So here, look at that's the impact
with him for just a little bit of time.
Yeah, and that's the impact that he had on a guy that was clearly like the Royals' top prospect, and then obviously has become the face of the franchise. So Whit Merrifield, you had one heck of a career. You had one heck of an impact here on Kansas City. So shout out to you. Congrats on retirement. He says he has a young kid that he's chasing around. He said he'd rather be chasing toddlers than chasing sliders.
Yep.
That was a funny little note there. But I think that's all we have here on this Tuesday edition. Did we forget anything, Gabe? Or?
Don't think so. We'll see how the Royals do tonight.
Yeah, 3-game set against the Tampa Bay Rays and a 3-game set against Shohei Ohtani and the LA Dodgers. It is a big week of baseball at Kauffman Stadium, and two really good teams coming to town, both with more than 40 wins, taking on the Royals, who are trying to get above that 40-win threshold. So that's all we have here tonight. Take care, guys.